man? This is Crrow777. I'm here talking with Bruce Seasall, and Jason Lindgren is actually doing the recording for us. And I just want to say, hey, Bruce, I'm really glad to meet you. I've been looking at some of your work over the past few weeks.
Thanks a lot, man. It's a pleasure, you guys, meeting up with you guys. And much respect of your work, man. The Lunar Wave, awesome. And the UFO video with the afterburners and amongst many other things. I'm really happy to get the chance to say hi to you today.
Right. Well, I'm looking forward to this. I haven't seen your complete setup, but I think I've seen the back of it. I want to talk scopes in a minute, but I want to get on the record. There's a lot of censorship going on YouTube, and you got nailed. 2 of your videos. Actually, while we were trying to undo one video that you got nailed on, while we were emailing, you got nailed on another video.
Yeah.
And I raised holy hell, and I understand you got an apology email finally, and that was all straightened out. From what I understand, you are whitelisted now. That's not in my power, but I immediately recognized this had to be the automatic systems that have to do with how the ads run on YouTube. But anyhow, I just wanted to get it out to all your people. I don't do censorship, man, not cool. But I was hoping we could take a minute to talk telescopes. So from some of your images, I think I can see the back of your scope. Are you running a 14 actually?
Yeah, it's a 14-inch Celestron telescope, CGXL. Wow. It has HD options on it. It's an amazing telescope. I'm really happy to have gotten a chance to do it. At the back, I have a DSLR. It's it's a Nikon D3400, 24 megapixels, no zoom, of course. The zooming, I'll do it digitally, with regular programs on my computer. But trying that out, this is the first year, and it's pretty incredible. It's clear, good for small details and stuff. You got some serious tools. So you and I are slightly different. I have an 11.24 inch Celestron, but as you know, every inch bigger, you get hundreds of % more light collection, because basically telescope's collecting light's what it's doing. But so your DSLR is right to the rear cell of your Schmidt Cassegrain, if I'm understanding you correctly, which is how I did it. I have a D800E Nikon, and the only reason I'm mentioning it, by the way, it does have 36 megapixels at the time. Wow. That was the most you could get, and that's really in the editing room. That's where you get your extra zoom and stuff. But the cool thing about that camera is the E. They made it for a very short period of time, and then they went to like an 810 or something. But that E tells you that the pixels are not dithered. So when you're picking up small objects, there's no dithering on the pixels. And you and I were just talking about like the thruster craft thing that I filmed in front of the moon. That's the real thing. But I'll tell you what, with the power and reach of the tools you just described to me, you're in a position to uncover some very important things. In my view, the moon has been misdescribed. I think you and I have a slightly different view of the moon, but it doesn't matter to me, man. Anyone who's out doing the work has my respect. Absolutely, man. I have still yet to look into a lot deeper in what you're doing. Of course, there's so many people out there doing things, but we may have different perspectives. But I'll tell you what, I really appreciate your work. You got some really fine stuff out there, and you said it, like the small detail, that pixelation, is not dithered, and we could really see the fine detail by slowing things down and doing the magic with the editors. But finding an actual craft like you did with the burners, well, it takes a lot of work. You have a good scope. An 11 is an amazing scope. I jumped. I didn't get a chance to try the between the scopes. I went from a 4, almost a 5 scope to the 14. But still, just amazing stuff that we could see on the surface there. And you said it, the moon is not exactly what people think it is. It's a lot different. No, it's not. And we should say, for the record, I know you're getting to have quite a number of followers. So you're probably going to have people asking you about scopes, because they want to get in and they want to be part of things. So I'll throw my piece in here, and maybe you have a point of view. But I used to be a Meade guy. I have an old 8-inch Meade, which is what I filmed the first lunar wave with, Schmidt Cassegrain scope. But back in the 90s, it was all made in the U.S. U.S. steel. That thing is still a tank, still trucking along. So come to the modern age, when I've quit all my corporate work and I've said, to hell with this, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm sitting down to film for the next 4 or 5 years to produce all the footage I did, I get a 12-inch
Meade telescope, and that thing just fails time after time. Meanwhile, the scopes are no longer made in the U.S. They're being made down in Tijuana, and I think a Chinese company has bought them out, actually. But my point here is, if people ask me what to get, I always say, don't get a small scope. You'll outgrow it quick. You want at least 6 or 8 inches, like at least 8 inches probably, but do not buy Meade. Do not do it. They're junk compared to what they do, and I always point them to Celestron, and I guess you would probably have a word about that, because there you are. For a while, you couldn't get 14-inch Celestrons, so how are you digging that scope?
It's just amazing. I was looking into, I said maybe they were making 16s. I don't even know. I honestly don't even think they do.
No.
No, they don't. That's right. So I'm digging it. It's amazing. It's different than what I thought, though. When I got the scope, I did it that quick that when, you get a scope, there's no zoom button on the scope. There's no, you get the scope and I'm saying, wow, thousands of dollars, and I'm just looking at the moon anyways. And I was nervous at the beginning, saying, I hope that I'll be able to do something with the footage, but you said it's by, the high definition, or your 36 megapixels. Well, that's what gives you the power to do the zooming, the editing, widening, whatever you have to do to be able to zoom in. And I am just loving it. I started with insects, man. I started here on Earth because obviously we're Earthlings, and I started doing insects and getting in close. Ants, anything small to try to show, alien life forms, but on Earth, like animals and insects. That's what I was trying to show. But it's the same thing now. I'm having as much fun trying to get into the surface of the moon. And yeah, I noticed that before even zooming in, around the moon, there's all this activity going around.
Did you film your insect work? That's something I would love. I almost added to my channel back in the day. We got kind of a crappy digital microscope, and it ended up not being good enough. But I'd be interested in that too. Did you ever post any of the work you did with insects? I
believe I have some very basic videos, maybe 5 or 10 on YouTube itself. You'd have to skim through them in the older videos for sure, but it's exactly what you were trying to do, is that I wanted to, slow motion, zoom into, like National Geographic. They have all these amazing things that we see in the nests of birds. And I was going to bird sanctuaries and just the insects. It's just incredible getting even insects on the flowers with the water, the ants drinking out of the center of the flowers. And it was all this new world I was trying to document. But it was at the same time as I was doing this, and I sort of got carried away with space work. But I promise you, if ever I look into my things and I do see some, I'll definitely share them with you, Crow. It would be a pleasure.
Yeah, that's very interesting to me. But I want to talk turkey for a minute, because I noticed that what I ended up doing was what most astronomers or amateur astronomers are told not to do, and that's film a full moon full frame, not zoomed in. And the reason I did it is because by accident on I think it was the super moon of 2012, my nephew and I were looking through eyepieces. I didn't even have a way to film, and he goes, Uncle, there's a triangle. And I'm all, what? And I'm thinking, damn, I missed it. Well, wow. Sure enough, for hours we sat there watching these black triangles go between the end of my scope and the moon. So that's how I started the filming thing. But most people, and I wonder about this too, you're told, don't bother looking at a full moon. There's no shadows. It's boring. Nothing is going on. And I can't argue with that. You will put in the hours, but that's how I accidentally filmed the 2012 wave. But I'm noticing you're in close, so I've got to ask, are you doing eyepiece projection, or how are you getting up close on it like that?
Nope, not at all. It's all done. Like, all the filming I do is filmed with the camera at the back, my DSLR, and it has no zoom, so it's just straight up 24 megapixel filming the surface of a 3,910 focal length in width of the thing. And then it's afterwards. What I do is I do all the zooming in with an editor, and no exceptional editor so far. Nothing. I could do it with a free editor. The same work can be done with a free editor.
There's something to be said for that, Bruce. I'm actually a good animator and I'm a good graphics guy. But when I first started posting objects that I caught, people kept accusing me of creating it in an editor. So I was always careful to do very little editing. And like, if I changed something, put it in frame, brightness was changed, or 500% zoom. But so you, with your big old honking 14-inch scope, you cannot even come close to full framing the moon, can you?
Absolutely not. No.
Wow.
I have to have I have a regular P900 or my Fujifilm. I'll at the same time, if I want to add that in the video, I have to film it with the camera, because in no way I see about a quarter of the moon. That's about what I see, and which I didn't know even with the 5 and 6 inch scope, 5-inch scope when I had gotten it. I was like, whoa, this is wide, you know, because it was a 1500 millimeters, the one I had. And I wish, though, I would be able to zoom out with that telescope enough for me. You know, I know we can with the eyepieces and stuff like you say, but I haven't gone into that at all. Just straight up, like you said, the camera at the back. And the little bit of filtering that I use is the X-ray filtering, which is basically 99% the inversion. It's just changing the surface colors of different areas. What's dark becomes bright, and what's bright becomes darker, or tones and colors. But an amazing view. But I'm noticing these little things going by, and they can't all be satellites. But I can only see them when I slow down the footage. I'm not seeing any UFOs on the surface unless I slow it down at all. You see blinks of light and stuff like that, but there's something up there, you know. I haven't even gotten a UFO between Earth and the moon yet with the telescope. I've never showed one, you know, and with the smaller telescope, I was getting so many UFOs between Earth and the moon. But now, for some reason, either they stopped zooming around but I'm pressed up on the surface and I see them. And obviously, since I'm so close, I'm probably not seeing the ones that are around the moon, because I'm, you know, the light, you know how the telescope works when you get off the moon. Well, you just lose that image and it gets very bright unless the whole telescope is on the surface. And like you say, with the full moon, we don't get much on the full moon. So it's a cool story. You said that you actually got it during the full moon when the moon was wider, because the same here, you know, you try to film the moon and you don't hardly see anything. It's just so darn bright. So.
Well, you've got to, at that point, you've got to, you know, you're not going to use auto settings on the camera. You're going to crank down your ISO and your aperture and things like that. Then a scope your size will be able to look, because without a filtering system, I know exactly where you're coming, but you can deal with it with manual settings. But yeah. I'll add this. As time when I first started doing this and filming all the time, I was perfectly ready to accept satellites, and I was even looking at all the tools that, because I wanted to film one crossing the moon. And so all these times there was a transit and I'd be out there and nothing would happen. So as I began to look into it, I began to realize a number of things about satellite, which is why I say now satellites do not exist as they're described. Don't accept them. Now, there's tons of these little black round things, which I'm sure you must have filmed. If you haven't, you will. They're almost like balloons. And I've always wondered, I consider it all human technology, everything that I've filmed, and I'll explain why in a second. But there are these little black round things that almost look like balloons. They're at different levels and heights, and they're up there all the time. And many people have filmed them. Richard 205 Maria in New York, New Jersey, Randy in Houston, other people who had good, solid scope equipment and camera confirmed that these little black round things that I've posted, so many of them are up there all the time. I suspect that's human technology doing maybe what satellites do or something else. But here was my breakthrough moment. I was minding my own business one day, kind of like when YouTube flagged your video and put my name on it. Yeah. and I found out that the Huffington Post had taken one of my clips and ran it in the Huffington Post, and then had an FBI expert and of all people, the head of MUFON, claim this is clearly a satellite in half geosynchronous orbit that Crow has filmed, and clearly he doesn't understand his tools. And by then I'd had enough. So, wow. And I'll give you this tip right now. There's a place in Oceanside, California called Oceanside Photo and Telescope, OPT Online, one of the best scope shops, one of the biggest left in the country. There's a guy there who is an optics expert. So I'd had enough of these guys bad-mouthing me in their newspaper with FBI. I don't know what the FBI would know about anything, but they get an FBI expert and the head of MUFON. So we go to calculate my exact Schmidt Cassegrain with my exact DSLR to figure out physically what the width of a pixel would be at half geosynchronous, which is 11,000 miles.
Comes down to that.
So geosync would be 22,000 miles, and they're saying clearly Crow filmed something in half geosync. So we do all the calculations, and I take the object and I measure it, and I forget what it was, like 5 pixels across or something. And they even tried to say that a couple pixels had to be reduced because, and you know, I told you I was using an 800E. There's no dithering, so I even subtracted a couple pixels. I do the calculation, and the object would have had to be something like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times the size of the ISS if they were right. And I did this with a number of my things. And as I began to understand, and I got a new system, and the same guy, optics expert at OPT, helped me calculate exactly those values, I began to realize that everything I filmed was much closer, and in my view, all human technology. And I think you and I might differ a little there, but that's how I arrived, partially how I arrived at where I am.
No, I mean, I am so, that's amazing, by the way, all the way up to Huffington Post, because they do that, eh? They can grab your stuff and just post it. But, you know, we may not be that different as you think, because I'm telling you, I really have an open mind to many things. And I have in my head both sides. What we're seeing up there is not necessarily all alien, and maybe none of it is. And that I will never rule it out. And you're saying that it could be all human and all high technology from us, like military or whatnot, secret societies, anything. I would believe that. I would believe that 100%. I'm not going to rule that out. And it could be very well true also, because it's easy for them to say, wow, they're going to think it's aliens, and we're going to, you know, be able to freely roam around. We'll even come and abduct a couple people once in a while, take them away, you know. It's real. But I remain open-minded, and I respect a lot of the research you're doing, and a lot of other people are doing, for sure. So
one of the most amazing things, or not amazing, but one of the most inexplicable things that I filmed was when I was doing the chemtrail work all the way back when absolutely no one would accept that chemtrails were a real thing. I kept seeing all these things they call orbs, and they were always around chemtrails. So finally one day, my wife yells at me, "Hey man, get out here. There's orbs all over these low chemtrails." We could see them with our eyes, which was unusual. A lot of times we filmed and we didn't know till we reviewed the film, but we could see, we knew they were there, tons of them. So I picked one with a handheld shot with a 16 megapixel Canon T2i of all things and a 35 millimeter lens, and I'm sitting there watching the one that I just chose to watch. All these things are flying through frames. This cotton candy crap is falling out of the sky. And my wife's yelling at me, honey, you got to get the scope out. And I'm thinking, God, I want to get the scope out, but by the time I film it, I'll miss all this. So I was afraid. I was afraid to put the camera down. So I'm filming it, and lo and behold, the damn thing shoots like 2 plasma beams out of the orb into the chemtrail. And to me, that's posted. It's called The Shooting Orb on my channel. But for the longest time, I was wrestling, you know, what the hell is this? And so to cut to the chase here, in my view, this is human tech, and not maybe a year and a half, 2 years after I had filmed The Shooting Orb, a guy, and I don't even think his channel's up anymore, sent me footage from, I think it was Oahu, where the skies are really clear, and he filmed a military plane dropping what looks exactly like orbs. And I thought, that's interesting. Now, it wasn't identical, but close enough where it got me thinking. But from my point of view, anyone who goes and looks at the shooting orb will be thinking, damn, what the heck is that? I mean, I shot it, and I still to this day think, what the heck is that? But to me, for anything to ever be alien, I mean, it would have to be one astounding piece of footage, and I don't know what it would have to have. It would have to have something really going for it for me to consider that anymore, because of the amount of research Jason and I have done, where basically places like Tavistock claim the modern alien agenda. We've gone through the documents and everything, but you know, you should check it out. I'll send you a link after this to the shooting orb.
I appreciate that.
Another thing is, you got a big ass 14-inch scope, and I got to the point where I could take my 11 and by hand, with just the hand controls going on, I could track a chem plane if the trajectory was right. Your 14-inch scope on chemtrails, if you ever shot an orb, man, you might be able to look in the window and tell us what they really are.
That's awesome, man. And I'm going to take your suggestion on it. You know, you just intrigued me so much talking about orbs. because I didn't know, of course, you have a lot of research. I'm going to have to go through a lot to find out everything you've gotten. But listen, I've gotten daytime orbs right here in Montreal, Quebec. And I've come to the understanding that some areas, these objects are frequent. Like, I don't know, where exactly were you when you were filming this, Crow? Whereabouts are you?
San Diego. And as I first started to do it, they were frequent. And as time went on, it became very difficult to catch anything. But I have a lot of daytime footage. There's a lot of weird, I mean, I don't even care if there's no orbs. Anyone who points a camera up, a good camera during the day, and does it, an hour or two regularly, you're going to catch things.
For sure. For sure. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. That's incredible. And it's so interesting. You also talk about them shooting out something, because you see, I have these orbs. I was describing them as shooting out other orbs. Like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, or maybe it's not the same kind of event, but that's really intriguing me, because it looked like a yo-yo. It would swing around, come out, and go back into the center of the light that was coming out. And of course, this was all happening so bloody fast. It was so hard to slow it down, but I did. And I showed 1 or 2 videos of that. And you see that the orb is spitting out other orbs. That's all I can say is that it's spitting them out. But I don't know, that was intriguing to me. So those orbs, it's an energy, So yeah, it could be intelligence. It could be human intelligence, of course. But I mean, they got this down pat. If it's human intelligence.
Well, I can add this. The one, if you go look at the shooting orb clip, and there's a couple versions of it up on my channel, it drops into the chemtrail from up above. And meanwhile, by the way, I know I'm filming. This is not one of those cases where you're reviewing footage and you go, whoa, what's that? I mean, we knew we were doing it. So the chemtrail was being pushed to the south by the wind, and the orb comes into the chemtrail angling to the north. And as it gets into the chemtrail, it changes its trajectory and goes against the wind, totally to the north. But as you're mentioning what you filmed with orbs, it almost like, if I wanted to describe someone in a sensible way, what it looks like, it could almost be like static electricity. Like if you have an electrified body and a spark jumps off of it. And what you're describing too, it's almost like that. But
you said cotton candy too. So right off the bat, I related to that. It's just this a white smudge, but the smudge is perfect, if you know what I mean. It's
right.
It's smudging, but it's bright, and it's remaining its shape. It's keeping its shape. It's just like continuously blurring itself somehow. And it's not the sun. Sometimes you look at these orbs and you go, it's not the sun that's doing that. It's just they're reflecting themselves. Seems like they're reflecting themselves. I don't know.
So check this out. There's another piece of footage on my channel where my wife had gotten up significantly earlier, and when we were in San Diego, it was very easy for me to get my scope out, and I had to have a surgery and stuff, so I still got a little more to go before I can haul out my honkin' 11. I don't know how you deal with your 14, because
sore backs, man. Sore backs, I said.
Yeah, it's dangerous because you don't want to drop anything, and you can't touch the tube or you'll mess up your tracking. But anyhow,
right.
My wife, I come out and she's all, man, I've been waiting for you to get up. Look. And she points due east, and there is a big old honking orb just sitting there. And she's got my camera out, and she's had one of the cameras on it. So I go get the better camera. That thing sat there for hours until the chemtrails covered it up. But what you can notice about it, if you look at the footage, is the lighting is not constant, and it's not perfectly round either. But that is a hell of a good piece of footage if those are the same things. Sometimes it feels like the orbs that are around chemtrails are like perfectly round, but you don't know how far away from them you are. This thing was just barely drifting. And I mean, I was getting out all my tools to see if there was a tether holding it to the ground or something. That's how stationary it was. But it wasn't. It was an orb, and eventually the chem planes covered it up. But I've got fantastic footage of that thing sitting in one spot for hours.
That's incredible, eh? And you say that it's all over the world, all these sightings and stuff like that. And why the orbs, Are they? There's so many things that we don't know about. Maybe the orbs have nothing to do with the UFOs, or maybe the UFOs are the orbs, or
I don't think they're UFOs. I think it's human tech, and I think it has directly to do with the chemtrails. The chemtrails is a global thing, and I go so far. Weather isn't even forecast anymore; it's scheduled. That's the way I view it.
Yeah,
But I'll tell you another thing. There was another piece of footage I shot that got picked up all over, and it was partially because I was new to being a public figure, and I did a thing I shouldn't do, and I named the clip Chem Bomb. Today that would be called clickbait. What it actually was we had a break in the chemtrailing, and we saw the first plane come in low, and so I ran in to get my equipment. And while I was doing it, my wife looked up and goes, "Look, there is a huge orb." And I saw it. And so this time I run in, I grab my 8-inch, I drag it out, don't even plug it in. I'm doing this all manual. And so, and you know how hard it is to do that. So by luck, I get it in the viewfinder and I'm filming. And so this whole time, and one of the versions I posted, you can hear the conversation we're having, like, oh my God, these orbs are so much bigger than we thought they were. And I'm saying things like this, and all of a sudden the thing blows up. Boof! And all these particles start raining to the ground, and this like tether that was inside it with a little like white or red light on it fell. I realized instantly it's not a weather balloon, but it's exactly like a weather balloon. And what had happened, as far as we can tell, is the first plane came through. My wife spotted it. We set up. And as we were setting up, the second plane came through. So I've described that wrong. The second chemtrail came, and then my wife spotted it. But we're pretty sure, we didn't see it, that the object I filmed was dropped right out of the second plane because it was a flight path. First of all, and you can't just let weather balloons go anywhere. These planes were flying right there, but that's posted as well, and it gives some insight into them monitoring themselves, because I always imagined, I filmed it until my roof blocked me, and it fell into like crowded neighborhoods and all the crap raining down that came out of it, but I could see the little red black box thing. Then I could imagine that it said, call this number if you find this or something. They were collecting data. Yeah, they must have been pretty clear to me that it was a balloon-like device they dropped out of a plane to collect data on their chemtrailing.
That's incredible. So these orbs, probably you think that they would have to do absolutely with the chemtrails, and the chemtrails having to do with like you said, the scheduling of the weather or something, right? Here's
the thing. It got to the point where we realized if you want to film an orb, there have to be chemtrails. Then it got to a point where we realized we've never seen an orb if there aren't chemtrails. And then one day, and it was around the time that I filmed that 3-thruster human machine at the time seemed like a spacecraft to me almost. But that human tech, it was either the day before or day after, if I remember correctly. I might not be remembering that right. I see an orb and it goes by the moon, and I'm all, what the hell? So I get my scope on it, and you know what it did? It went all the way across the sky to get to a chemtrail.
Yeah, and see, this is what I'm seeing the orbs doing. See, I thought somehow that it was a highway, right? Well, I mean, I'm talking hypothetically in basic. I'm not adding in any info with what I'm saying, but it can be a highway. Like, the orb is the same reflectivity as the chemtrail itself. We're not going to see it unless, like you said, noticing it, slowing it down. But they're there. They are there. Different sizes, different shapes, basically always cylindrical, oval, but some of them are like cotton candy, like you said, that blurry sort of thing. But what the heck are they? I don't know. But they're everywhere. I'm seeing them too. And could some of these orbs be seen at night? Some of the UFOs that are spotted, could it be some of those orbs?
Well, that's another good question, because it got to the point in San Diego, there was a period of time when I couldn't film the moon because there were so many chemtrails, and we began to ask the same question. Look how bright these orbs are. They look like little balls of light. Even when they're in a white chemtrail, you can see this little ball of light most times. And so we started saying, we see them around chemtrails all the time. Why can't we see them at night? So I was busy trying to film, and that led me towards getting a full spectrum camera. So then I go out and I buy, I don't even know the model. I'd have to go look at the Canon with 24 megapixels. Yeah. But there's a place, I don't know if it's called Spencer's. No, it's not Spencer's. It's something else. It's in Utah or something like this. This dude takes them and he converts the chip cover so that it films a little into IR, a little into UV, and visual spectrum. And it gives you, like, your footage has a pink look. But truth be told, you're not getting very far. It's full spectrum, just not very far into either spectrum. The reason for that is in the 70s, they changed the laws. Old old tools made like in the early 70s go way into IR and UV, but the military said people can't have these anymore for some reason. I forget what the story was. Yeah, old Russian stuff from the early 70s goes ways in the spectrum, but that's when I got that.
Stuff, the best stuff. That's why people are using some old equipment.
Exactly.
People are laughing at them. In reality, they're not the same. You know, it's like, no, I totally agree with that.
So it got to the point with the full spec that I could look through chemtrails and see the moon. As a matter of fact, one of the lunar waves I caught is rather bizarre because I'm filming the moon and I have both cameras. I have my really good Nikon piggybacked on top of my scope with a honkin' telephoto and a doubler. So it's looking at the moon. So on the back of the scope, I have my full spectrum camera. Pretty soon, the regular camera piggybacking can't see through the chemtrails. I just turn it off. But the full spectrum is still peering through. They're getting so bad, the chemtrails, that it's starting to ruin my vision. And I'm talking on the phone as I'm doing this. And all of a sudden, all the chemtrails part, and lo and behold, a lunar wave goes by, and then all of the chemtrails cover back in over the moon. And I got that all with the full spec camera.
Yeah, well, so, Crow, don't mean to cut you off, but do you agree with me? Maybe, possibly, you know, the chemtrails, I know it could be weather related, but could it also be hiding an astronomical event, something that they wouldn't want us to see, like in space? Like you say, it's covering the moon, you know, maybe. Maybe it was trying to hide that at that moment, the lunar wave. I don't know. They said, oh, there could be a lunar wave going by at a certain time. We'll just smoke certain areas. It'll be seen more in the States there because of where the sun is and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they could very easily do that. We'd never be able to say they're doing it because it's just always just a cloud going by.
Just seems like you're being paranoid. No, we ask these questions. And for everyone, all of your people that are going to hear this, I would add this. We notice that they're always spraying across the ecliptic. Now, if you're thinking, what's the ecliptic? Just think to yourself, the sun comes up in the east, it travels a path and sets in the west. That path is the ecliptic. And so what it basically means is the sun, moon, and the so-called planets are all within that general area. But what you'll also notice is not are they always spraying across the ecliptic, but where sunrise and sunset occur. And so, there's something to it. And I have maintained for a long time that the person who takes as much time to film the moon that will film the sun will discover something astounding, because there are friends in the country that I have that have never seen a sunset or a sunrise in 4 years due to chemtrailing. Go over to Washington, D.C., it will boggle your brain how badly they are sprayed every single day. And that's where my friend told me, you know, years since we've seen a rise or a set because of the chemtrailing. Here where I am in Rhode Island, we have seen 2 days since I've been here, almost 3 years, where we could see the sun setting every other day. Chemtrails.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. And, you know, the chemtrails, they appeared at one time many years ago because, you know, I never saw them, the planes acting the way they were acting. And to see up to 7 or 8 planes side by side, like in almost an army formation, military formations. And again, you said something majorly important is along the ecliptical horizon, or it's going from moonrise to moonset, where the moon rises and sets, where the sun rises and sets. That line, that is where they are spraying, and they often spray when the moon is at the top of that line, over top of us, you know, and I'm noticing that. That's something very real.
Well, people can pay attention to quite often the same thing you can say with the sun is, why are the chemtrails always between my point of view and the sun? I think chemtrails are doing a lot of things. They're manipulating weather, for one thing. That's admitted. And people still like to argue whether chemtrails are real. And I got news for people. That's admitted now, too. This is when I was back there trying to get people years ago to pay attention, and they're telling me I needed to put down the crack pipe, I don't have to make that argument anymore. It's admitted flat out that weather manipulation is real. As a matter of fact, in 2008, the Chinese openly admitted they had a weather modification bureau and accidentally caused a massive storm in the vicinity of the Olympics. But my point here is they're blocking a crap load of sunlight. That's one thing that you can demonstrate it's doing. They're manipulating weather. And then, of course, the lab reports, which we've known about for many years, prove that they're spraying heavy metals, barium, strontium, forms of aluminum. And this is not arguable stuff anymore. So all the people that kind of want to get conned by the contrail excuse, I got one more nugget for you. Go look up the engineers that will tell you about the modern high bypass jet engine, and they will tell you that modern high bypass jet engines are so efficient it is nearly impossible for them to create a contrail.
Oh, that's right. I believe that. And that's another thing, the contrails. People don't understand the difference, between a chemtrail and the contrail. They're all saying that all the planes have smoke behind them. Yes, they do at a certain height. Yes, they do. But the smoke doesn't react the same way.
It's not smoke. It's water.
There you go. Exactly. And it vaporizes itself. But aluminum oxides and all that spraying and what about, does it have to do with the, we've heard in the past, even during the Vietnam War, I think they had manipulated weather at one point and made it rain. Right. Over certain areas and stuff. So people say, oh, it's a bunch of bull and stuff. It's not. And you said yourself they even admitted to all of these. And this is very real. But the public is not interested, but they know. It's been inscribed that the chemtrails are very real. And we see people spraying them. I've seen pilots speak up themselves on video, which the videos are still up, saying, that there's how they're spraying and at what heights and different stuff, reasons why they have to spray. So, and the proof is there. It's absolutely there.
When I was a kid, this didn't go on. It was sometime in the mid to late 90s that it started to be visibly going on. By the time we passed into the 2000s, it started really picking up steam. By the time you get to 2005, there was nary a place in the world, and I had followers from every country with an internet connection. The only place I have ever heard from, some people in Australia say they don't see them a lot, but I've had others in Australia tell me they do. But the only place that claims they never get chemtrails is up in the Himalaya, near the Himalaya on the Indian side, which would make sense because that's all pretty pristine and all that. But yeah, it's just a shame how easily people are fooled into, like they've even began to edit old movies, chemtrails into them. And there was a good example of a television advertisement from the 70s where two kids are sitting on a fence by a train or something. The original version of that exists, and now the version they play now has a chemtrail added into it. And if you look at any car commercial, it's very rare when you're not being subconsciously programmed with the chemtrails. Like, here's our new car that you wish you could have, and your subconscious, by the way, is staring at the chemtrail in the sky right now, thinking that's just normal.
Exactly. And it becomes normal, eh? Whatever they tell us is going to be normal, well, people think it's normal, even my parents, my family and older people, they believe in the news. They watch the news to find out what's going on. And then, it's not that the news is always necessarily lying. It's that they don't know themselves half of the time what they're talking about when they're talking about chemtrails and stuff like that, But they shouldn't have that power, the media, to be able to say what they want, because everyone's believing every single thing that they're saying. If they talk, live headlines and they start saying that, well, there's nothing going on here and there's nothing going on there, most people will believe that. And it doesn't mean it's true. I'm happy that there's more people now keeping an open mind. And, it's sort of like we're living in this illusion where the signs are all up and everything, we got to follow the signs and stuff. But in reality, no one's reading between the lines. There's other signs, in nature and however that we're able to see that. But do you think there could be any, this is just a basic question, do you think any other planet could have life or an atmosphere like Earth, Crow, anywhere?
No, in the research that I've done, and I've gone back to some of the oldest texts we can get our hands on in this world. I've looked at the old alchemists, which is these guys precede the idea of when the church started making globes available to everybody and to take over curriculums and things like that. My view is that what you're looking at when you look at the moon, when you look at the sun, or any of the so-called planets, you're looking at a luminary. They're not nearly the distance you've been told they are. When I look through my telescope, if I'm looking at Jupiter, I'm looking at the moon, I think the same thing. This is part of our system here. These things are part of us. The moon, for my money, if you could get to it, which I don't believe you can, you couldn't set a boot on it. It's not a rock in space. Anyone who's done enough research and not just swallowed what they were told understands wholesale that the moon landing is complete poppycock, provable complete poppycock. And once you know that, you have to start to ask, well, why? Why would they? Why go through all that? And what's funny about it is even if you look at when they told the moon landing lie, there was a trifecta that I used to use all the time to show what an illusion our world is. I used to call it Manson, Moon, Woodstock. The news in the U.S. put out the moon thing, then to get people quit looking the Manson thing, then the Woodstock thing was, those things were jammed right together. So it's like, look at this. Oh, don't look too long. Now look at this. In the United States, most people understand the news is here for one reason, and it's not to inform you of anything. Jason and I have done a number of shows to outright prove there are two mega corporations that own almost every single information system in this world that matters. What you're looking at is agenda. And not only that, it could be considered one corporation because all the board members of both corporations hang out in little things like the Club of Rome or the TFR, these types of things. So that the very same people are on these other clubs that are even at a higher level. But most people have a hard time when I began to explain the luminary idea. But in my view, we live in a closed system. Nobody gets out of this place with their body. That's why they didn't go to the moon. A lot of religious people like to say, told you so, that's the firmament. I'm not going to argue with those people. I don't call it the firmament, but what I call it is a hard, fast boundary. And I'm quite open to the idea that when we film a lunar wave, it has something directly to do with that boundary. And I'm also on the record as having said it's possible space is some kind of liquid. What we call space is some kind of liquid. Again, religious folks will come up and they will point out the firmament separates water from water. And again, I won't argue. These ideas are not peculiar to just Western religion. They show up in Eastern religions and other places. So that's my view. And I know it's probably somewhat different, but I'll tell you what, how long have you been filming with the big honking tools?
1 year with that 14-inch and no longer.
Wow.
I've been doing this for 2 years, but I started with a smaller telescope and even a camera at the beginning. But
you're going full time too, right?
Yeah, exactly. In January, I'm starting full time, and I'm going to start. And what I'm going to be doing is exactly what like you just said. I'm going to be observing a lot of observations before making any drastic conclusion or any confirmation, which I don't confirm anything ever on the channel. I usually just share my own beliefs and thought. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what the heck's going on up there around the moon, with the moon, and between. Like you said, there's some kind of liquid or something. It looks like it. I agree with it. It looks like we're looking through some kind of a clear ocean at times.
Yeah.
And, the things that I'm seeing flying around could be those little black things you're talking about, those oval things. I'm seeing a lot of clouds and mists that are changing directions and going whatnot on the surface. They're definitely there. Maybe they're off of the surface. I don't know how high off, because like you said, we don't know exactly how close the moon is. And I agree with you. I don't believe they went to the moon either. And they can't right now. I mean, so long science, it makes sense that it would be absolutely impossible. Even themselves, I think, I'm not going to mention any names, but we did hear some stories about some of the people themselves that went or that were responsible for the project, saying that they lost the technology to be able to go to the moon.
Well, here's one for you. The man who made the technology was Wernher von Braun. I invite everyone to go look at his headstone. There is one thing written on his headstone. It is a verse from the Bible that encodes 9/11, and it basically says God's handiwork is the firmament. That's what Wernher von Braun left us. But I was going to mention another thing, since you're into the water idea. You got a big honking scope. It would be very interesting to see footage from you where you pick up a bright star, like maybe Aldebaran or, anything, even a planet, and then take it out of focus And when you take it out of focus and film it for a while, what you'll see is it looks exactly like the pattern a light in a swimming pool at night makes. But someone with a big scope like you that did that for like an hour or something, who knows what we've learned. Not only that, someone filmed in that way and caught a wave going across in the same way two people now have filmed the wave in front of Jupiter.
Oh, well, that's funny you say that. It was Jupiter or Venus that I filmed the wave, and I have a video up. And the waves are excessive waves that are waving one into each other. They're not all going the same way. They're all veering into each other and bouncing off the surface of Venus or Jupiter. I think it was Venus. And that was absolutely amazing. I caught that. I filmed it, and I never got that in front of any other planet, but it was something pretty incredible. I mean, it's funny that you say to go out of focus, because I actually was out of focus, and that's why I saw it.
Yep.
Literally why I saw it. Sometimes some people post, the research, and something's blurry, or there's a certain way or a certain color that they're seeing it, and they don't want to see it that way. Often people tell me, I want to see something clear. Stop filming, blurry stuff. Well, it's physically there. That blur is could be what's there. So we're filming it, but people don't. It's when you look at a research video, sometimes, make a long story short, I do something like go out of focus or show it eccentrically different, but it shows us other features. Like you just,
That's right. And not only that, I would mention too, Venus is an odd duck of the so-called planets, the only one that phases, and it's basically the only thing brighter than Venus is a full moon. And not only that, whenever you hear in any old work the reference to the evening star or the morning star, because Venus can be both, that's what you're looking at. As a matter of fact, Islam, when you see that star and the moon, that star on the Islamic flag is Venus, believe it or not. Most people have forgotten that. But I'll tell you what, Bruce, I wanted to catch up, and I wanted to say hi to all your people, and I wanted to show you some respect, because believe me, I know how hard the work you're doing is. I did it for years.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, there's people have no idea that sometimes you'll spend 20, 30, 40 hours, and finally you'll get 10, 15 seconds worth of video that matters, and to keep that up over a period of time. But you know what? You got the big tools. You can do the whole out of focus thing. You could do the sun thing with a cheap solar filter. By the way, I was going to mention with a focal reducer, actually maybe it's the reverse of that. You could probably full frame the moon with your 14 or come close. You should call OPT and see what tools they have, so you could reduce the image down a bit and try to full frame it. It would go right on the rear cell. I'm trying to say focal reducer, but then I'm thinking maybe I got it backwards. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
I know exactly what you mean, though. No, it makes sense, and I appreciate the suggestion. No, absolutely. But Crow, everyone loves you. I don't know why it is that some channels have 100,000 subscribers, but yet 500,000 people know you. Because I've heard more than 100,000 people tell me to look at the lunar wave. And I think it's incredible. In my comment section, everyone knows about the channel. So you did some really good work. And, I really respect you and appreciate you respecting the differences. I mean, we could have differences. I mean, we're researchers, but it doesn't mean that I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but we have to share the stuff. You'll see something different in my research, and I'll see something different. You'll teach me something in my research, and that's how it is. And I mean, I'm all for it. I got big thanks to you for connecting with me, man. My community is going to be so happy hearing this conversation and getting to know more about you, because I wanted to know more myself about you.
Well, I'll tell you what, respect to you, because your tools are getting bigger and better, and you're doing the dang work, man. But I will echo what you just said. There's this thing I call the shill reflex that everyone's been programmed to do online, and it's just what you said. Our point of views don't have to match. All we have to be able to do if we want to be useful human beings is to communicate about it. And I'm fully prepared to accept whatever ideas you have. I may not adopt them. I may learn something from them. But the biggest downfall of online communities right now is fighting over religion, over belief systems, and this plays right into the hands of the people who run this show. We should be building community, and I'll tell you what, man, you and I should talk. We will again, but let's make it a point next New Year's Day, since that's what this is, to catch up again, and let's see how points of view have developed. After all, so many people make a belief system, and that's it for the rest of their life. When you can sit there and look at a tree and understand that every day you held on to that belief, the tree grew. So we could even learn something from a tree, maybe.
Absolutely, man. I love your words. You're a smart guy. Thanks so much for connecting, man. You came right to me. You jumped on. I mean, listen, you have no worries about, as of from me, the way I'm going to talk about it again in my community. I didn't know that it went that deep, what happened with my 2 videos going down. I didn't even mention it, but by mentioning it in the video, maybe I should have waited, because if it caused anything or a stink, like I said, I'm going to vouch for you that I had no problem with your channel.
You know what? You were a stand-up guy. I heard what your first reaction was, and anyone reading a notice that has another channel's name on it would think a similar thing. But the absolute bane of our existence for the next few years is censorship, and we all have to stand together. If you see any channel get censored, you should be firing off emails to YouTube complaining about it, unless they're hurting someone. You know, if someone's doing injury in some way, that's the line in the sand. But when I saw you got censored and then saw my name put to it, no, screw that, man. I'm putting everything down right now, and I'm all over this. And you did get an apology, didn't you, by the way?
I got a full apology, and I think it was sooner than I had even told you, because I had probably not even noticed that it had come in. I got a full apology in a letter, and I really appreciated it from them directly. Your name was mentioned in the letter, and they said that you were not responsible at all for anything that happened. And
there's progress.
Yeah, man, sticking together, that's what we got to do. And I love you for connecting with me. Thanks a lot. And I hope stay in touch. And even though we're not going to get, we may not have to get together, whether we get together or not, I mean, on radio or through Skype, I'll still send you some things when I get some things. And if I need any information, and I'd like to get your information on some of my findings. I won't flood you, don't worry. Once in a while, a big finding, I will try to ask your suggestion on what you think that it is that I'm finding. So
perfect. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. You know, I get so many videos sent to me of like, oh, look, this plane just went through the sun, and oh, look, the moon's changing size. And you know what it is? Everyone's overexposed. They don't understand that if you overexpose the sun, any image will disappear in that bright glare. Exactly. And when you change the settings on your camera, the moon will shrink and grow until you're not overexposed anymore. But Bruce, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sure Jason will get this over to you right away. And hey, Jason, you want to say good night to everyone since you're here?
Happy New Year, everyone. Hello and goodbye.
All right, there it is. Bruce, I'll catch up with you soon. And cheers to all Bruce's followers, man. Be good to him. He's doing the work.
Thanks a lot. Same to you and your community. Jason, it was a pleasure meeting you. Thanks a lot.
You too, man. Take care.
Take care, guys.
We'll see you. Bye-bye, bud.